Hello, and welcome to another episode of Decoded. I am Sister D, and thank you so much for coming back to watch another episode. So, for today's episode, we will be talking about pandemic pestilence. Pandemic pestilence. Now, what does that mean? Well, as you all know, last year, actually, for the past few years, not just last year, uh, have been very interesting, right? 2020 hit and the COVID 19 virus took flight and shocked the world, affected the world, infected the world in a way that was very surprising for some and unfortunately fatal for others. And we all know someone who has been affected and infected by the virus. And just as this year, 2023, took off, we thought we could see a break. We thought we would be able to get some sort of relief from this pandemic. But the wicked elites who control much of what's happening, of course, by the ability and authority of the Most High Yah, still have nefarious actions and deeds that they want to implement. So today we're just going to talk about some of those plans as it pertains to a resurgence of the pandemic and what you as a saint should do in order to prepare yourself both physically and spiritually. Both physically and spiritually. Spiritually first, that's the most important, and physically second. So, this is pandemic pestilence. Pandemic pestilence. Now, so that we get a better understanding of everything, let's look at the definition of pandemic. It is a widespread occurrence of an infectious disease over a whole country or the world at a particular time. Now, let's look at the definition of pestilence. Pestilence, a fatal epidemic disease, especially bubonic plague. All right, so this is a picture of Bill Gates. I think many of us know who he is. If you do not, well, he is the co founder of a very successful computer company by the name of Microsoft. And as you can see, according to the picture, he is a multi billionaire. Now, what does that mean for us? It means not only does he have a lot of money, but he also has a lot of power and influence. And if you remember during the inception of the pandemic in 2020, he was one of the main spokespersons who was very vocal about COVID and some of the events that transpired. And he was one of the main propagators and pushers and promoters of the jab, the COVID 19 jab. Also, he has a foundation called the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, and they are also investors in some very prominent organizations, some very prominent health organizations as well. I believe the WHO, the World Health Organization, or I believe it's the World Health Organization. They contribute financially as well. So, what you will continue to see is Bill Gates continuing to be the spokesmodel, if you will, the visual representation of a leader with power who is someone we should maybe listen to, look up to, take advice from, heed advice from. That's what he desires. Those of us who have our spiritual lenses on, we know that it's much deeper than that. This is definitely a time where we must use spiritual discernment. Ask the Most High for spiritual discernment and understanding and wisdom. The triple threat, if you will: spiritual wisdom, discernment, and understanding, so that you can know who to trust and who to avoid, who is sent from the Most High and who is sent from the adversary. Okay, I have my own personal reasons as to why I do not trust Bill Gates, but it is up to you. And use what you know, use what the word says. What does the word say about um, discernment, right? You should always seek advice from the Most High before you just decide to listen to someone who has, influence and who is affluent. Just because they have money doesn't mean they always know what they're talking about or that they should always be deemed as trustworthy. So let's see in this situation, because he has been, like I said before, very vocal and very outspoken about COVID. And the last time he spoke, or previously before the COVID epidemic, he actually said there would be some type of pandemic, right? And he actually did a TED Talks where he spoke about that and did a presentation about pandemics and population control and all that as well. But let's see what Bill Gates says about the next pandemic. Let's take a look.
We need to be prepared for the next pandemic. We're not prepared for COVID-19, so we need to do better. And we need to be committed to make sure all tools get out to everyone in the world. China's expertise and resources and manufacturing capacities will help us meet those needs.
Now, the first thought that entered your mind might be, huh? What? I can't believe it. No. Well, how does he know? Really? Another pandemic? So soon? I thought it was over. Lots of different thoughts, lots of different questions, maybe feelings of confusion, maybe anxiety, worry, fear, being afraid. But I want to remind us, saints, of something very important, right? We have to remember who is the ultimate authority, the ultimate leader, the ultimate guide, the ultimate director, the ultimate orchestrator of everything in our lives. Let us not let man and what man says, what man does, what man thinks interfere or obstruct or confuse or bewilder us, because we know those are all actions of the adversary, Hasatan, right? We know that. So instead of becoming frightened and worried and consumed with anger and all of these other emotions that are low vibration, negative, dark emotions, right? Remember an important scripture. Let's look at that right now. Okay, so Second Timothy chapter 1 verse 7 says, "For God has not given us a spirit of fear, but of power and of love and of a sound mind." So it does not matter what Bill Gates has to say. It does not matter what Dr. Fauci has to say. It does not matter what President Biden has to say. At the end of the day, they are not the Most High. They are not El Elyon. They are not the creator of the heavens and earth. They are not the one who gives you life, gives you ruach, spirit, right? They are not the ultimate authority. The Most High Yah, the Most High God, the creator of heavens and earth, is the one who is the ultimate authority. He is the one we look to for guidance. He is the one we look to for instruction and understanding. He can use and he does use humans, but we also have to use that discernment to know which humans to listen to so that we can make the proper decisions. So just even after listening to that, don't be dismayed, don't be discouraged, right? Let's see what else is happening. There is another clip I want to show you guys, and this is of something that Joe Biden stated. Let's take a look. All right, so this is an article from Insider. Biden says another pandemic will come and the U.S. needs to start preparing for it. Now, how does he already know that a pandemic will come? Well, let's read a little bit more. It says President Joe Biden warned on Tuesday that the U.S. would eventually face another pandemic and said the country must start preparing for it. Quote, "We do need more money," end quote, he said at a White House press conference when asked about getting Congress to fund COVID-19 vaccines for infants and toddlers. The president said funding for the vaccine supplies would last until the end of the year. Quote, "But we don't just need more money for vaccines for children. Eventually, we need more money to plan for the second pandemic, or maybe pandemic," end quote. He said, quote, "There's going to be another pandemic." I'm going to say that again, quote, "There's going to be another pandemic," end quote, he added, quote, "We have to think ahead," end quote. Either he's an amazing psychic or he's a part of the orchestrated pandemic, and he's just telling you guys what he and his elitist friends have already planned. You be the judge, you decide. But I believe above all, we must keep an important scripture in mind, right? We know what the wicked elites have planned. We know what happened in the past, but we also know who sits on the throne, who's looking at every single one of us. We are small as ants, but the saints, his beloved ones, the apples of his eye, we are mighty, we are important, we are capable, and we are powerful. Let's look at Ephesians chapter 6 verse 12 so we can be reminded of what this real war is about, right? Because the enemy has his chess pieces and the most high has his. Actually, let me not even give the enemy the chessboard. He's playing checkers. He's playing checkers. Matter of fact, he has a coloring book. He's not even playing. He's not even playing what we're playing. So, Ephesians 6, verse 12 says, "For we wrestle not against flesh and blood, but against principalities, against powers, against the rulers of the darkness of this world, against spiritual wickedness in high places." Let us remember that, yes, the president, yes, President Biden, and yes, Bill Gates and other people have announced their future plans. But at the end of the day, the Most High is on the throne, and this is a battle of spirit. So we must use the spirit in determining what is best for us and our families. Don't go in there with a carnal mind because you will automatically believe what the mainstream media tells you to do. That's why so many people ended up getting pricked in their arm without even praying and had some severe side effects. Now, some people did not have side effects, but some people did. And some people had some seriously severe side effects that landed them in the hospital. So we just have to make sure that we seek what the Most High will have us do before we make major decisions like that, injecting things into our bodies that we don't know what the ingredients are, especially something of this magnitude, right? At the end of the day, you make your own decision, but my only advice would be to ask the Most High because that's a very serious decision, right? So, speaking of, some of the things that have occurred and transpired, there is a video of a young lady who works at a hospital. I believe she is a doctor. I can't remember which type of doctor, but she has some very curious words to say, and she's actually highlighting and divulging some information that her hospital and her boss shared with her. So let's take a look at that.
I work for a large hospital system in Broward County, Florida, on the anesthesia team. Last night, the house nurse manager came to my department and told us that we must prepare for a COVID crisis that's going to start next week. And the hospital will be taking part of our recovery unit, anesthesia recovery unit, to house COVID patients, and that we cannot allow surgical patients' families to come visit them. And I looked at her and I said, "How do you know you're going to need our rooms, our bays? And how do you know there's going to be a crisis next week?" She tilted down her glasses. She looked at me and she said, "You know what's going on by now." And I said, "Yeah, I do." And everyone else just went, "Oh, here we go again," and shrugged their shoulders. Does anyone else find this really strange besides me? It's about time that this whole corrupted, stinking system is brought down.
I know this is the face that some of you all may be making right now, being shocked and surprised and just astonished at what's going on. But I think a lot of us know by now, not everyone, some people still believe this is just a natural occurring pandemic, but those who have eyes to see and ears to hear know that this is deeper than what we've been shown or told or taught. So we know that what comes with this pandemic, right? A so called solution, which is the jibby jab. So, of course, the officials have a response. And of course, they're going to continue to propagate the jibby jab. So, let's see what President Biden has to say about that. All right, so it says updated COVID 19 vaccines are coming mid September, officials say. And I'll just read a little bit of this article. COVID 19 vaccines that have been tweaked to teach the body how to fend off the current crop of circulating variants are now expected to land in drugstores and clinics in mid September, CDC and FDA officials said. The officials spoke Thursday about the U.S. government's preparation for the fall and winter respiratory virus season on the condition that they not be named. So they already have a new batch of COVID jabs that are going to be uh, distributed and dispersed for the public in mid September. So they're definitely going to be reaping the harvest of their financial investments, if you will. Let me just say it like that. So that's another thing to look out for, right? The jibby jab is it's never really left, but we'll see that influx and that flood of propaganda, commercials, advertisements that push those signs on buses everywhere to get poked. So that's another thing for those of us who have decided to avoid that. Just continue to stay strong, continue to stay grounded in the Most High and His Word, will, and way, right? So let's continue on. So we know that with the spike of cases and the spike of hospitalizations and the push for the jibby jab, we have to be more prudent now more so than ever. What does that mean? Well, let's continue to focus not only on our spiritual man but our physical man, right? We know that the prudent man prepares. So let's look at Proverbs chapter 27, verse 12. A prudent man sees danger and takes refuge, but the simple pass on and suffer for it. So remember that if you are a person who is seeking wisdom and understanding, you have to prepare. Let's look at what the meaning of prudent is, just in case some of you may just need a refresher, or if you've never even heard of the word. Let's see what the word prudent means so that this verse can make more sense. Prudent means acting with or showing care and thought for the future. So, a person who is thoughtful and pensive about the future prepares for what? The future. So, you might be confused about what am I preparing for exactly? Well, of course, we're preparing for things physically and spiritually. Let's hone in a little bit more on both of those aspects, right? So we can know what to avoid, and then so we continue to learn about what to avoid and also how to avoid them. So, as I mentioned before, the jibby jab is one thing that we have to make sure we are prudent about, right? And preparing and planning for. Why, though? Why should we not trust the jibby jab? Well, let's look a little bit more in depth into the main company that is the main propagator of the jibby jab. That is Pfizer. Let's see what's the big deal about them. Well, you guys remember the Grammys, right? Let's take a look at that real quick. And remember that Pfizer was the main sponsor for the Grammys last year. If you guys remember how demonic the Grammys were, they were disgusting. So I'm just going to show a little bit of an article about that. All right, so the article says not everything is of coincidence. Pfizer, meaning in Hebrew, goes viral in wake of Grammys sponsorship. All right, it says as the Grammys continue to be the topic of conversation online, netizens discovered that the award ceremony was sponsored by Pfizer. The same was discovered after Sam Smith and Kim Petras' unholy performance. Several conservative netizens have since taken to social media to diss the organization and its supposed connection to the devil. Now, before you become a skeptic, we're going to look at this a little bit more deeper. First of all, let's see what a commentator had to say. All right, so this commentator says, "Do you know that Pfizer spelled backwards is Rezif and is of Hebrew origins, means Reshef or burner, god of the plague and of the underworld. Not everything is of coincidence." Well, let's find out for ourselves. Let's look it up. All right, so this comes from the Britannica. Reshef. You can already see that if you turn Pfizer backwards, it kind of, resembles Pfizer. Let's see. Reshef. Hebrew, the burner or the ravager. Ancient West Semitic god of the plague and of the underworld, the companion of Anath, and the equivalent of the Babylonian god Nergal. He was also a war god and was thus represented as a bearded man brandishing an axe, holding a shield, and wearing a tall pointed headdress with a goat's or gazelle's head on his forehead. Reshef was worshipped especially at Ras Shamra, Byblos, and Arsuf, later Apollonia near modern Tel Aviv Yafo. Under the title Mikal, he was also worshipped at Belsheen in eastern Palestine and at Eliam in Cyprus. Reshaf was usually believed to be related to Mot, the god of sterility and death, but he also seems to have been a god of well being, plenty, and fertility, and in that respect, he may have been a form of the god Baal. Interesting. So that is the history. That's the background information on Reshaf or Pfizer backward. And so you can already see some of the parallels, right? He is the god of the plague and of the underworld. Pfizer's name happens to resemble that god if you switch the letters around. And what is the COVID? COVID-19 is a what? Plague. It's a pestilence. That's why the name of this episode is Plague, Pestilence, Pandemic, Pestilence, because the pandemic is a pestilence. And Pfizer is at the forefront of this whole pandemic. That is not a coincidence. Now we know that Pfizer and all these other organizations and agencies may have their dark plans and demonic plans and schemes set for mankind. But regardless of what Satan's puppets have planned for us, we must remember Philippians 4:13. I can do all things through Christ who strengthens me. Right? No weapon formed against us shall prosper. Let's really remember that and truly keep that in our minds and our hearts. Now, you may be wondering and thinking and questioning, okay, I know about the plans. I know that another wave of COVID is coming. I know that they're going to be pushing the jibby jab. I know that the prudent man prepares. I want to be prudent. I want to be one who plans and prepares for the future. What can I do to prepare? What does that look like? Well, let me show you. This is what it looks like physically to prepare, right? You see a picture of a man, and behind him in the background, he is in front of his pantry. As you can see, he is well stocked. He has a lot of supplies, has water, canned goods, and I'm sure a host of other products in his house, in his storage room, whatever that space is. But that is preparation physically, right? Making sure that you have enough medicines, making sure you have enough food, enough water, all of those things that are necessary to avoid having to rely or depend on the government should they try to implement a nefarious, demonic agenda to push the jibby jab in order to buy food, in order to enter the grocery store. We don't know what these wicked elite puppets may do. So we have to consider all possibilities because they are lawlessness, right? They are lawless creatures. They are lawless beings. They are reckless. They will do whatever they need to do to push their agenda and to continue to enrich themselves monetarily. So we must be prepared physically. So that means stocking up, right? Learning about farming, gardening, everything you need to know how to create your own grocery store, if you will, where you don't have to rely on outside sources as much. So that's one way of preparing, right? Just making sure you stock up on water. If you have a well, of course, that would be even better. Some type of, water source would be wonderful. That's ideal. But if not, just stock up on water as much as possible. So that's how we can prepare ourselves physically as well as continuing to eat in a healthy manner. Make sure your vitamin C's. I'm not a doctor. I'm not going to pretend as if I am one, but I know some basic things about the human anatomy and biology. Vitamin C, the immune system, those things are important, right? Get your sun. Um, get sunlight as much as possible. I actually even heard that grounding is beneficial for the human body. That's where you just stand in soil for, you know, 15 minutes or so, 10, 15 minutes. And I heard that has positive benefits as well. Learn about herbal remedies, learn about natural remedies for illnesses and problems. Don't always rely on Western medications and things because they're going to continue to propagate their drugs because it's enriching them, right? They're getting rich off it. So, buy books. There are so many books about herbal remedies and how you can treat yourself using plants, using what the Most High has put in the ground. All of the medication that we need is under the ground. Okay. So that's how we can prepare ourselves physically. Now, what about spiritually? Well, one of my favorite verses and chapters, Psalm 91, is the answer, right? Let's see what it says. Psalm 91, let's look at the first four verses first. Number one, he that dwelleth in the secret place of the Most High shall abide under the shadow of the Almighty. I will say of the Lord, he is my refuge and my fortress, my God, in him will I trust. Surely he shall deliver thee from the snare of the fowler and from the noisome pestilence. He shall cover thee with his feathers, and under his wings shalt thou trust. His truth shall be thy shield and buckler. That's a powerful, powerful. Although those are only the first four verses, those first four verses are amazingly impactful. Why? How? Because dwelling under the shadow of the Most High is where we get our protection. Dwelling in the shadow of the Most High is where we get our safety, right? That's our refuge. That's our fortress. No matter what's going on outside, no matter what's going on in the world, no matter what man has planned, we are trusting in the Most High. He is going to be the one to deliver us from the what? Verse 3 says the noise and pestilence. COVID 19 is a what? Noise and pestilence. He is the one that delivers us. He's going to cover us with his feathers of protection and strength and might. So no matter what any man has planned, the Most High is the one that we need to look up to look to for guidance, for information, for knowledge, for strength, trust, everything you can think of, right? So that's the first four verses. Now we're going to get into the last half of Psalm 90. Well, not the last half, but a few more verses of Psalm 91 because it's a very powerful chapter, and I definitely encourage listeners to read the whole chapter and memorize it. It's an amazing chapter. Right, verse 5. Thou shalt not be afraid for the terror by night, nor for the arrow that flieth by day, nor for the pestilence that walketh in darkness, nor for the destruction that wasteth at noonday. 1,000 shall fall at thy side, and 10,000 at thy right hand, but it shall not come nigh thee. Only with thine eyes shalt thou behold and see the reward of the wicked. And of course, it gets even better, but for time's sake, I'll stop there. Psalm 91 is probably the most powerful chapter that speaks to what's going on now with this COVID pestilence, this pandemic pestilence that's happening in the earth right now. And eventually, as Psalm 91 verse 8 says, we will see the reward of the wicked. The wicked who are planning these things and who are being instruments of death because people have died. Thousands, hundreds of thousands of people have died, right? Or been injured, permanently injured in some way, shape, or form. These people are going to receive their reward. And so, as the Most High deals with them, may we just continue to stay strong and focused. Right, in my last video, I did discuss how we must stay and remain focused on Him even throughout this political season. I'm saying the same thing in this video. May we remain focused throughout this pandemic season. Focus on Him. Take care of ourselves physically, mentally, spiritually, right? Don't just believe any and everything mainstream media says because they say it and they are in positions of authority, right? You have to ask yourself, well, who are you really serving? What God are you serving? Are you serving the God of the Bible? Or are you serving Baal? Are you serving Satan? Are you serving Satan? Who is this person's God? Now you might not get that answer right then and there, but just look at a person's actions and it'll be obvious. Pray for discernment, it'll be obvious. And above all, before you make any major decisions, because they're going to continue to push these jibby jabs, pray. And if you need to, go a step further and fast. Don't just receive information without questioning it, without filtering it. That's the problem with too many people. They just accept what someone gives them. That's indoctrination. We are educated. We are not indoctrinated. If you are indoctrinated, then you have to be deconditioned out of that indoctrination and be taught and learn how to think critically for yourself. It was really amazing to see how many people just lined up to get the jibby jab without questioning anything. I even saw a video of a woman who said, and she pointed to her arm, she said, "Stick it right here. I don't care about the ingredients. I'm not going to ask what's in it. Just give it to me." And I said, "What? You don't even care about the ingredients?" So this is the brainwashing, this is the conditioning, the programming that unfortunately many people, not everyone, but many people have succumbed to, and just keep your eyes set on the most high and, the wise one, the almighty, because he will definitely impart, as he says in his word, in you wisdom. He gladly gives wisdom, so gladly ask. And so that's all for today. I hope you enjoyed Pandemic Pestilence. Stay safe, stay blessed, and the Most High bless.